So I'm looking at this question, you know, in light of the evolving and intensifying crises that we're confronting. What new models are we thinking about that that create the possibility of a sustainable, life-affirming future? So I'm going to try to think about that question and think about models that actually address this. And I have in my own mind several that I draw on that I want to mention. And again, the objective here is to make a sustainable and just future and peaceful future possible. And another way to say that is that we're talking really about a transformation. You know, we're not going to, you know, we're not going to fix the problem here in any one area, whether it's the expanding wars, the attack on our civil liberties, the collapse of our democracy, the threats to the climate. Small changes around the margins are not going to do it for any one issue. We really need deep, fundamental, and transformational change. And it's really important, I think, and I'm so grateful that you've posed the questions the way you have, because they really make us think very deeply about what's going on and how do we avoid fighting within the same paradigm. Because we can fight a better fight, but if it's still on this incredibly tilted playing field and we don't have the numbers or the energy or the power to change the terms of this debate, this fight, then, you know, we're sort of doomed to keep rolling the rock just a little bit up the hill, and it will keep rolling down again. So how do we fundamentally change the terms of the engagement here? So there are a couple of things, basically 4 things I want to just share by way of models to use in our work going forward. One is this holistic model. The idea that we need to bring together more of the powerful forces. And you know, if you look at where the numbers are, again, it's in that economic struggle. The numbers, and if you look at polls, opinion polls for what people are worried about, they are worried about peace and they're worried about climate. But number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I think 11 on a recent poll, the main things people were concerned about were all economic, and then it got to other things after that, but it's all like survival stuff. It's really brass tacks. In the US, it is brass tacks, and again, 1 out of every 2 is facing poverty or low and declining income. Everybody except the top 10% or so is facing declining income, but for most people it's really very serious and threatens survival. So of necessity, that is where people are going to be thinking. So just, you know, making the point that we need ways to bring us together. And I found for myself that coalition building became so much easier after I got arrested for home evictions. By getting arrested for African American families who were trying to keep their homes, suddenly it gave the other work that I was doing a whole lot of legitimacy with those groups, and they became willing then to take on the climate struggle too. So there's real reciprocity that you can develop by going to those struggles. And same thing, you know, youth. It's really important for us to integrate youth into this struggle. How do we do that? We've got to make the cost of public higher education and student debt core to our agenda. The minute we have a joint rally, which is about bringing the troops home, cutting the military budget, stopping the drones, ending student debt, you bet all the students will be there. And they will take this on as their own struggle. It's just not their number 1, because they're not sure they're going to live long enough, you know, to face the consequences of the aggressive hair-trigger U.S. foreign policy. Number 1 for them is getting out of debt and figuring out, you know, how they're going to put food on the table. So again, and the image that comes to mind for me is in my in my work as a clinical doctor, which I did for about 25 years, I never had anybody come in to the doctor's office. Do you ever go to the doctor's office and say, just take care of my kidneys and forget about my heart and my lungs and my brain and my emotional self? You know, just take care of that one thing. You know, we don't do that. You know, we don't think that way. We don't think that life depends on just solving one issue. You know, our own lives depend on our health and well-being as a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual body. And same is true of society. We've got to solve all these problems. So people get this. It's just by history and by convention, we organize in silos. But the more we can bring those silos together, suddenly we are going to find that, you know, it's really amazing. And I'll just mention briefly, David and I had the great privilege to be at one of these multi-issue events in Los Angeles a couple months ago. It was a music and political event. I'm not recalling the name of it offhand. If the name comes to you, shout it out. But it was absolutely incredible. There were these incredible hip-hop groups, and just amazing music, and David and myself and a bunch of other speakers all had a chance to do it together. And the young people who were there, and it was a flood of young people. There was like a line going around the block to get into this event. You know, it was almost entirely people under 30, but they were as wildly enthusiastic about what David had to say about war and my comments about jobs as they were about, you know, their own musical and cultural heroes. So I think we need to think more strategically about how we bring us together because the agenda is shared. A quick point about diversity, because again, once you get outside of the more educated and privileged groups that tend to be doing organizing, at least, you know, organizing in a lot of the conventional circles, it's a whole new ballgame. They don't need to be persuaded to stop the bombing. They don't need to be persuaded that the Defense Department is a complete, not only waste of money, it's a disastrous use of our resources. They don't need persuading. The problem is they are not voting because they are not represented by the two political parties that, you know, and the corporations that also control the airwaves. So it's about creating new structures for communication. It's about doing our work in a more collaborative way so that we're working with the eviction blockades in our communities, as well as the drone protests. You know, to start developing collaborations of resistance that cross lines. We'll find that the color lines and the generation lines completely disappear, and you know there is no lack of sense of family and community that can be developed in an instant when you start going to the demonstrations, when you go to the labor movements, the strikes and so on. You'll find that it's just it's an instant kind of collaboration, and your efforts will be repaid in force by making the first moves. Let's see, and then briefly about another model thing. I want to just say a couple more words about the Green New Deal model as a model for how we can, in fact, fix the whole tamale. And I mentioned, you know, that the Green New Deal was a way to sort of model the New Deal of the 1930s, where we created jobs, put people back to work. But the idea is to modernize it, and as you put people back to work, solve the other critical problems that we face. So one is to create the peace economy, create the green economy, to demilitarize, to tax the rich. One very important aspect of this model is that it also solves the health crisis. It makes wars for oil obsolete because it creates the resources for energy right here at home in a clean and healthful way. But the health consequences, I just want to mention, because we're told, you know, we can't afford to do this, we can't afford this energy transition, we can't afford to create the jobs. But in fact, the studies show that the health benefits are so profound from transitioning to green energy, from fossil fuel and nuclear. The health benefits are so profound and immediate that it more than pays for itself. So there is no cost problem here. It's totally cost benefit. The other proof of this is what happened in Cuba in the early 1990s when the oil pipeline went down in Cuba with the fall of the old Soviet Union. Cuba no longer had the energy coming in. It also no longer had the pesticides and the fertilizers. They had to convert overnight to a clean energy system and to an organic system of food production. So what did they do? They put everybody, you know, to work. Nobody was out of work. They got out the draft animals. They implemented an organic gardening system. They went to clean energy, largely through conservation, because they didn't have a lot of options. They had to make this transition really quickly. They took out their bicycles and people started walking. So you would have thought their economy is crashing. You would have thought this would have been a public health disaster. Everybody's depressed and, you know, the economy no longer can export, they can't import, everything is grinding to a halt. But what happened? What happened was their health, thank you, their health statistics, it was as if they had a health miracle overnight. Their rates of heart disease plummeted. Deaths from heart disease went down by 30%. Deaths from strokes went down 20%. Deaths from diabetes went down 50%. And rates of obesity went down by 50% overnight. Overnight. This is among people who already have chronic disease. Guess what? You get better. You get better when you start eating healthy food and you're no longer breathing pollution and you get some exercise. That's what a real healthcare system looks like, by the way. And overnight, they accomplished what we cannot accomplish, spending close to $3 trillion a year, which is the cost of our out-of-pocket, governmental, and private health care and insurance expenses. $3 trillion a year for $0. Cuba outdid us overnight simply by moving to a green energy and green food economy. So important to keep that model in mind, that there is a win-win solution here. Forget the hype about that we can't afford it. We can actually have it all. We don't have to lose it all. Right now we're on track to lose it all, but we can actually have it all. Jobs, an economy, a sustainable environment, and we can make wars for oil obsolete. Thank you.